Clean Energy Board of Directors meeting. Welcome everybody to the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board meeting for Wednesday, October 11th. And let's go ahead and get started with the roll call.
Thank you. I'll begin to my left. Alternate Director Craig. Alternate Director Showalter. Director Scozola.
Here.
Director Mohan.
Here.
Chair Tyson.
Here.
Vice Chair Walia.
Present.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Director Klein. Director Lee.
Present.
Director Meadows.
Present.
Thank you. I will note that currently we have Director Martinez Beltran and alternate Director Armendariz and Director Chua absent, but we do have a quorum of our board.
Great, thank you very much. Let's move on now to the public comment on items not listed on the agenda. And I don't typically read this out. I will this time. The public may provide comment on any matter not listed on the agenda, provided that it is within the subject matter jurisdiction of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair, that's me, is decreasing that to 1 minute for tonight. And we cannot, and I think that's all I want to say about that. So do we have any public comment of people in the room? Seeing none, do we have any public comment online?
We do. One person. This would be Bruce Carney.
Okay, very good. Please proceed, Mr. Carney.
Thank you very much. I will be as brief as I can. I just wanted to inform the board and the staff that members of the decarbonization advocacy community have become increasingly aware of challenges related to city building code, related to noise and setback requirements for heat pump equipment located in side yards, backyards, and possibly even front yards. And on a somewhat related topic, challenging requirements from building departments with respect to permitting and the processing of permits and inspections. And so I would just like to encourage all of the board members to make sure that their cities are really doing all that they can to be encouraging rather than discouraging of building electrification efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. That's a very good message. And I don't know if you had the chance to say all that you wish to on that. It sounded like you planned it pretty well. All right. Go ahead. Oh, all right. So I think we got that message from him. Let's go ahead and move on to our consent calendar. And so we have items on the consent that you see in front of you. Do we have any public comment on items on the consent? Inside the room, I do not see any. And are there any public comments online? Hearing that there are none, let's look for discussion from council. What are we? Directors.
Chair Tyson.
Director Meadows, please.
Yes. I don't want you to get credit for on page 4. Director Zagunis attended the Los Altos City Council meeting, not Los Altos Hills.
Thank you for making that correction.
Of course.
Do we have any other comments or questions from the board? And I don't know if I see any. Are there any? Do we have any any directors online?
No.
We do not have any. All right, that simplifies things. In that case, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Lee. And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Director Mohan. May we have a vote?
Thank you. Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Walia.
Aye.
Director Scozola.
Aye.
Director Meadows.
Aye.
Rennie.
Aye.
Craig.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Klein.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Mohan.
Aye.
And I will note that Director Martinez Beltran, Armendariz, and Chua are absent, but that motion carries.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move on to the regular calendar, and we have the CEO report. And I do believe our acting CEO, Monica Padilla, is speaking.
Can you hear me? Oh, great. Good evening, Chair Tyson and directors. I have a few items I want to call to your attention out of the CEO report tonight. First of all, I get the privilege as acting CEO to introduce our newest employee at SVCE. Her name is Gia Ilole. I've practiced many times. Gia joined us on September 25th, and she is now our Director of Human Resources. Gia will lead all HR activities at SVCE to further promote SVCE's goal of being the employer of choice. She has a BA in linguistics from the University of California at Santa Barbara, and she will report directly to CFO Amrit Singh. With that, Gia would like to say a few words to the board.
Good evening, directors. Chair Tyson, so nice to meet all of you in person tonight. I'm Gia Ilole. I'm very excited to be leading the new complete HR function for SVCE, the very first complete HR function for SVCE. And I'm excited to lead this company into the future as we grow with a scalable and efficient and effective HR department. I've really enjoyed my first 2 weeks here on board. This is just my 3rd week. And I have about 20 years of HR experience overall, started in healthcare and moved over to government contractors, including energy sectors in San Diego and then in Washington, D.C. I moved over to PG&E after that, got recruited back to California, which was an easy thing to say yes to. Spent a few years at BART and now have moved to Southern California. Spent a little time at the county and at a startup, and I'm very happy to be here at SVCE. Feels like a very good fit for me and my experience, both in local government, energy, et cetera. And I'm really excited about the opportunity we have to be a continuing employer of choice. I think that this team here has felt extremely engaged in what they're doing, and that makes my job very easy and very exciting to start to build programs and projects that will support the staff here. So thank you so much for meeting me today.
Great, and welcome, Gia. Glad to have you.
Great. So I also get the privilege of announcing several recent promotions, including Lisa Lai, who was the former administrative assistant. She's been promoted to administrative analyst. Jessamine Allen, our formerly known as a senior program specialist, has been promoted to programs lead. Peyton Park, who's one of the OGs with SVCE, was formerly the energy services lead. He's been promoted to energy services principal. And last but not least, Andrea Pisano, who is the board clerk and executive assistant, has been promoted to senior executive assistant and board clerk. So we're all excited about the promotions because, again, this helps us get to that state of being the employer of choice for all employees, including our existing employees. A couple of other items.
Let me interject and suggest a round of applause for all of our promotions.
And of course, Andrea is the OG. So we want to keep her. Next up, Electric Showcase Awards. So to recognize climate leaders in your communities and showcase that residents and businesses in existing buildings can and are going electric, SVCE hosted its 2nd round of Electric Showcase Awards. In total, we had 16 winners, and many of us got to go to your city councils and present those awards. Michaela Pippin, our Principal Communication Specialist, will share a quick presentation.
Evening, directors, chair, and vice chair. I am Michaela Pippin, the Principal Communication Specialist, and I am excited to be here tonight to give an overview and some additional background of our 2023 Electric Showcase Awards. Next slide, please. Specifically, some of y'all may have already heard our presentation to your council, so I wanted to give some additional background about the applications that we received, how we're continuing to promote these winner stories in your communities, and some more information about an opportunity to see some of these homes and hear from some of these winners in person this weekend. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the 2023 Electric Showcase Awards have been designed to pull out the electrification success stories that are already taking place in your community and share their inspiration and their advice and the challenges and barriers that they faced with not only your community members that they may be interested in taking these actions, but also with your fellow decision makers to influence future policy decisions. So with this program, we were able to develop 16 mini case studies. We have leveraged these fabulous stories and customer testimonials and a variety of marketing channels, and are sponsoring an in-person tour this weekend. Next slide, please. So diving into the application overview, as many of you have heard, we have selected 16 winners, but we actually received over 150 applications, which was a massive milestone for us. Back in 2019 was our first round of the Showcase Awards. We received about 18 applications, and that was 4 years ago. And so this just speaks to the change in times and what's available on the market and how folks are feeling about these and what rebates are available. So of those 150 applications, about 30 were from folks that were unfortunately not in our service territory. But then we had 109 other fabulous applications. And so we recognize these folks as our amped up honorable mentions. They received a gift certificate to go to a local induction cooking class. And we encourage them to take a friend to help spread the word about awesome electric cooking. And then we had our 16 main winners. And so this map just shows the distribution of where these applications were coming in from. Next slide, please. So as many of you have already had the opportunity to meet your winner or hear about your winner, we did select folks from 12 of our communities, which was really exciting. We had folks from Gilroy and Morgan Hill up to Mountain View and Milpitas. And what we found with these 16 winners is that they fell into 3 different phases of their journey. So we had our people who were just getting started and had maybe done one appliance, our folks who were almost there. They maybe had their gas stove left or were waiting for their water heater to burn out. And then we had our friends who were all electric and have already removed gas completely from their home. And we felt it was really important to showcase all these different phases because there are so many diverse paths that can be taken to achieving all electric or primarily electric homes. And there isn't one specific way that is correct. And of course, these are awards. So we did give out $95,000 in awards, $5,000 to our residential winners and $10,000 to our commercial and multifamily properties. Next slide, please. So we had these really impactful stories, these fabulous customer testimonials, and we wanted to make sure that we were sharing them in all of the channels possible. Next slide, please. And so we've done this in a variety of ways. Starting with digital, we have a web page that highlights the 16 micro case studies. It has smiling customers and again, their inspiration, their key advice, which is great. They talk about their interactions with contractors or navigating the rebates that are available. And then we had Juliet Pasquale, our community outreach fellow, designed a beautiful social media campaign. And so that's been shared with you and your PIOs to share on your own channels. We're also highlighting each winner on our social media channel. Next slide, please. But we wanted to go beyond the digital space. And so we have also been in front of most of your councils and boards. Apologies, we do not have every photo up because we just had two successful meetings last night, but just want to express great gratitude for all of you for accepting our presentation and recognizing these winners as leaders in your community. Next slide, please. And if reading about their stories or hearing firsthand their stories isn't enough, we are also inviting all community members and councils to the electric home tours to see the actual electrified spaces in person. Silicon Valley Clean Energy is sponsoring the electric home tours, which is happening this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's over 40 homes that will be opening their doors and sharing their stories between San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. And since this slide was made, there's actually 770 people that are registered to tour these homes. So very impressive interest. The main host is affiliated with Actera, and registration is free but required to receive the list of addresses. And I believe that is, I can go to the next slide and happy to take any questions, and almost forgot to call out Benna Chang, who was so instrumental in coordinating all 12 presentations that we've done, working with board clerks and making sure that we are communicating our key messages. So happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you for that presentation. I just signed up, I think it was yesterday, so I'm one of those extra 200 something. So Director Martinez Beltran.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's amazing. 150 applications. That's great. And of course, we had Alexander awarded at our city council. I wondered, is this a part of a series? Are we looking for this to be something continual that we continue to do and grow?
Great question. And the answer is to be determined. So the first round was held in 2019, and this is the second time we've done it. So there was about a 4-year gap. And this is somewhat tied to some of the policy conversations that are happening. So we're kind of evaluating on an as needed basis, though we have seen great success with this version. So would be happy to do it again, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I know that we're one of those communities where, we had a gas ban that happened, and we've had proposals to bring that conversation back. And I think this is a great way for us to be able to educate everybody in our community as to what is possible. And I love that you have the different levels because everybody's at a different level. My other question, I can take that offline. So
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything over on this side? Yes, Director Lee.
Yes, I certainly want to thank Pam and Michaela for coming to our Board of Supervisors last meeting on October 2nd to honor the 16 winners of the Electric Showcase Awards. Certainly was very glad to have several of our counties winners at the meeting for the commendation as well. This is certainly a great way to encourage our residents to electrify, and it's one of many amazing things that SVCE right here is doing to accomplish this, whether through EV charging from solar panels and batteries, inductive electrical stove, cooktops, heat pumps on heating water, there and the rooms. These are all great examples that is not expensive to do. At the end of the day, it's actually not difficult. And so I just want to say thank you for highlighting all these great work and all the staff involved in this program. And looking forward to seeing more applications in the next Electric Showcase Awards. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
I don't see any other questions.
Thank you,
So
Chair.
thank you very much for the presentation, and look forward to Saturday morning, 10 to 4.
All right, next item I'd like to highlight from the CEO report is related to our decarbonization demonstration grant program. So particularly, we want to highlight Sunnyvale School District, which was awarded $500,000 through this program to replace existing gas furnaces with electric heat pumps at Vargas Elementary School. So the grant aims to demonstrate the practicality and feasibility of upgrading buildings with electric appliances to both reduce pollution and improve health. In total, SVCE has distributed $3.6 million to 10 awardees through this engagement grant program. And the funding from this came from the savings that was associated with SVCE opting to take the PG&E carbon-free nuclear allocation in 2021 and 2022. So tonight we have Deputy Director of Decarbonization Programs and Policy, Zoe Elizabeth, who will present a short but very fun video with our very own Director Klein being featured. So, and I should say that there was a lot of help getting us here and a lot of input. It's a great video, and I couldn't name everybody tonight to thank, but go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I have the easiest presentation of the evening since Director Klein and our folks at Sunnyvale School do most of the work. So one thing that I just want to highlight is, so we have these, over $3 million in grants. And the whole point of these grants is to demonstrate, to basically take electrification out into the community, right? So we have a fire station and a senior center and a library, and others, an exercise center in Los Altos. And so this is kind of the first example that you're going to get to see, but it's really about the engagement and demonstration out in these community spaces as much as it is about the carbon emissions that are being reduced.
Another thing that Silicon Valley Clean Energy does, besides providing competitive rates, is it invests in innovative solutions to reduce carbon emissions in our communities.
Vargas was such a strong candidate for the decarbonization grant because we were taking existing old gas-fed furnaces that make a larger impact on the carbon footprint and went towards a more energy efficient, greener approach with all electric barred heat pumps in the classrooms. So what we were able to do is we take an all electric barred unit, we build a little wing wall, we integrate it back into the corner, and it's relatively low profile, extremely quiet, and then run ductwork across the top.
Just having them so visible and accessible in classrooms will allow for teachers to really teach our students the impact of our carbon footprint here on campus, and how now we are creating a smaller footprint because we are running through electricity instead of gas.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy invested $500,000 in Vargas Elementary.
And that's a $500,000 that then becomes available of taxpayer dollars that are available for other similar projects downstream. So when we think about the next school that we're going to modernize, Sunnyvale Middle School, that's a $500,000 that's available for this type of project at that school.
Thank you.
All right, how about a round for them? Yes, Director Klein.
And I just want to thank staff for making me look good, of course, but you know, thank you for investing in our schools, and our, you know, Sunnyvale School District already had a focus of trying to do that conversion, but what Silicon Valley Clean Energy was allowing them to do was speed up that process. And just to see, just looking at the equipment, I think is the big thing, you know, seeing, you know, what the electric heat pumps and how that was how they were dealing with heating and cooling. This is so much more efficient, and just showing an example of how it can be better for our students, you know, for all kinds of ways. And so thank you for this organization to be making a difference in Sunnyvale, but especially in our youth, and showing the environmental impact of the programs that we can put forward. So thank you.
Great.
Just one last announcement. Oh, are we done?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to remind the board that we have our 5th ribbon cutting event scheduled for Yellow Pine 3 Solar Plus Storage located in Clark County, Nevada. That would be on November 1st. You're all welcome to attend. If you're interested in attending, though, please reach out to Michaela, who's coordinating this effort. And that would be it.
Great. Do we have any questions or comments on the CEO report?
So this is the one where we get to fly to Vegas? I'm just kidding. But seriously, actually, my chief of staff, my other job, actually has a house over there. We'll be there on that day, just so happens. So she will be attending on my behalf. But
Oh,
yes,
great,
Thank you
great,
so
yeah.
much.
All right, well, it sounds like a fine opportunity. And I don't see any other questions or comments, so thank you very much. Acting CEO Padilla.
Thank you.
For your report. Our next item on the agenda is item number 3, which is authorizing the CEO to execute agreements regarding prepay agreements. And so I do believe.
Chair, if you'd like to entertain, we do have somebody in the public, Bruce Carney, who would like to make a comment on the CEO report.
I would love to hear his comment.
Okay. All right, Bruce, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. So I love the tour of homes, and I do hope that Silicon Valley Clean Energy will consider sponsoring another one before 12 months have passed. You know, think about the leverage from people being able to visit neighbors' homes who have electrified or partially electrified. No sales pressure, no reason to feel that somebody is trying to push them into an ill-considered investment. Plenty of time to ask specific questions, knowing that the people whose homes they're visiting are in the same climate zone, possibly the same approximate income level, the age and style of the homes are similar. And so it's a very, very credible reference, as opposed, for example, to trying to use a school in Sunnyvale as a reference for investments by a homeowner in Mountain View or Campbell or Milpitas. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I think that doing this once a year is not enough. So I'll be volunteering to sit in the driveway of a home in San Carlos and hand out information about the homeowner's investments. The other thing I wanted to say is that I'm very pleased that Silicon Valley Clean Energy is doing so much across so many different approaches to recognize and promote those who are on the leading edge of decarbonization. I want to make a real shout out to the only Mountain View winner, which is the Sunshine Gardens apartment. It's a very unusual situation. It is an apartment building approximately 60 years old, whose owners have really taken it upon themselves to invest in decarbonization and energy efficiency in ways that nobody else in Mountain View and possibly nobody else in SVCE territory has done. And so I'd encourage staff as well as the board members, if they possibly can, to arrange a little visit to Sunshine Gardens apartment, to talk to Deborah Vasquez, the property manager, and learn from what they've done. They've taken advantage of every incentive program that they can get their hands on. And this decarbonization journey has actually brought the residents of the apartment building closer together and created a sense of community that perhaps did not exist beforehand. And I just think it's a win-win-win kind of example, and I'd love to see it replicated across the entire valley. Thank you.
Thank you for those thoughts. With that, let's go ahead and proceed with item number 3.
Okay, good evening, directors. I'm pleased to bring the third act of our prepay. So many of you board members who've been here with us for a while will remember the prepay transaction. It took us 2 years to structure the first prepay. And when we did the prepay, we know we were going to do many more of these to basically capture the savings. So we did one earlier this year. That was our second prepay. We think the time is right now to execute a third one. So with that, the agenda for today is there's two action items for the board. One is we're asking for authority to grant to the CEO to execute agreements with the parties that are needed to help us prepare the prepay transaction. These are legal counsels and the required financial advisor. And I will want to note that we have our financial advisor, Mike Berwanger, online with us. So he's also here for this presentation, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you, Mike, for being with us. The second ask of the board today is to approve the parameters of the transaction, to approve basically the execution of the prepay transaction. So the game for today is I will give a high-level overview of the prepay, what a prepay is. There are a lot more details in the appendix of the transaction, and if anyone has any more detailed questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well. And as I alluded to, we want to leverage the structure, the time and the effort we put into creating the first and second prepay structure, leverage that effort in executing this third prepay. We'll go over the fees the consultants and counsels will charge, and I'll just emphasize that these fees are for the most part contingent on the execution of the deal and are funded from the proceeds bond proceeds that are part of the prepay. So there's no net out-of-pocket cost with the exception of one fee, which I'll talk about later. And then we'll go through the parameters of that we're seeking authority within which we will execute the prepay. I'll talk about the physical impact, and we'll talk about the next steps. And just to note, the Finance and Administration Committee met last week and reviewed the prepay request that we're asking the board, and unanimously recommended that the board accept staff's recommendation. So a brief overview of the prepay goal and structure. So what is our goal in executing prepays? The goal is to reduce the cost of power that we normally purchase because of our ability to fund low-cost tax-exempt debt. So as a governmental agency, we have access to low-cost tax-exempt debt. Through this mechanism, we were able to flow that savings into our power procurement purchases. This is a competitive advantage to us. The investor-owned utilities such as PG&E, they don't have access to tax-exempt debt, so this is a competitive advantage. How we're able to do this? Basically, we partner with a taxable entity, in our case, Morgan Stanley. When they approach the debt market, they have higher cost of borrowing because they can only execute taxable bonds. We, on the other hand, can execute tax-exempt bonds, and the spread between the two, we're able to capture that savings and flow it into our power procurement transactions. And how we're able to do this is a prepay structure. It's a financially engineered structure. This structure has been around since the 1990s, was predominantly used in natural gas transactions. We were one of the first CCAs to bring it into clean power. And you'll remember that we also set up a bond conduit entity called California Community Choice Financing Authority. We were one of the founding members of this. This institution is through which we issue the bonds. The neat thing about this structure is we don't have to take the bonds on our balance sheet. So this is not a debt that we are obligated. This is off-balance sheet transaction. The bonds are non-recourse to us. We are not obligated to stand by them. And it's only a limited obligation of CCCFA. It's also non-recourse to them. It's only secured by the cash flows of the transactions and backed by Morgan Stanley, the funding recipient, should anything happen. As I mentioned, we have a seasoned team of professionals that we're seeking authority for the board to grant us ability to enter into contracts with them who are guiding us in this transaction. And a big reminder is that this is very minimal risk to us. The fees that we pay to the financial advisor, the legal counsel, they're all contingent on execution of the deal. If the deal doesn't materialize, they do not get they do not get paid, and they are paid from the bond proceeds, and the savings that I'm going to talk about will be net of these fees. There's only one fee that we do have to pay once we engage with them, and that's the rating agency, Moody's rating agency. Once we ask them to rate our transaction, they want to get paid. But if for that reason, we will only engage with them when we know for certain we're going to execute. And even for whatever reason, if that were to fall apart, Morgan Stanley said they will be willing to pay half of those fees if through no fault of us, the deal falls apart, which is a very unlikely event. And as I mentioned, the main thing here is the bonds. We do not stand behind the bonds. They're non-recourse to us. So that's sort of the overall review of the structure of the prepaid transaction. As I said, we spend more than 2 years. For the first one, we had many committee meetings, many board meetings where we went through in detail. And I do have detailed slides in the appendix that also go through the mechanics of the transaction. So again, we're leveraging the structure that we've set up. And I just want to remind that the two transactions that we have executed, we are enjoying on an annual basis combined savings of $6.5 million a year. There are other CCAs that have followed suit. They have taken advantage of the prepay structure. MCE, CPA has done 2 of them. Pioneer has done 1. East Bay Community Energy, they have done 3. If you remember, the first transaction we did was in partnership with them. 3CE is also pursuing their first prepaid transaction. And the par value of CCCFA executed transactions is just over $7 billion. So this is a significant entity that the investors are taking note of. So the transaction execution parameters within which that we're seeking board authority is the execution will be contingent on that the aggregate principal amount of bonds will not exceed $1.5 billion. So this is a large amount. Again, these bonds are 30-year bonds, not 1 year, 30 years. So that's a large number. When we go to the market, likely we're going to be in the range of $900 to $1 billion. We're not going to go with a $1.5 billion upfront, but we're asking for this authority because if the market is there and there's substantial savings on the market and our bonds get oversubscribed, as that happened to us last couple of times, we want that flexibility if the savings are substantial to be able to flex to a higher number. And all of this is we can still accommodate at the load, and I'll talk about later. And also the execution is contingent that the bonds are not, bonds issued by CFA are not guaranteed obligations of SVCE. The overall savings shall be at least 8% during the initial term of the bonds, based on the power price that will be established. Some other parameters we're asking for here is the commodity swap fee that's part of this transaction that's required, not to exceed 50 cents a megawatt hour. And again, these are 30-year bonds. The initial term of the bonds will be somewhere between 5 to 10 years, depending on the optimal spread that we see in the market. After the initial term, same as our first two transactions, the bonds will be repriced. And there is a minimum threshold that we establish up front. And we're thinking of that would be expected to be somewhere around 4%. And we nail this number down as we get closer to transaction time. The other authority we're seeking is that approval of Morgan Stanley as a prepay supplier. They were the prepay supplier for our first two transactions. We spent a significant amount of time when we did the first prepay, when we did an RFP among all the other active players in the prepay market, and we had selected Morgan Stanley. And when we selected them, we knew we were going to do more than one transaction because of the effort required to establish the prepay structure with this counterparty. The authority we're seeking is that the bond underwriting fee not exceed $5 per bond, plus an underwriting expenses not to exceed 50 cents per bond. Energy service revenue fee that's part of this transaction will be $1.10 per megawatt hour. And if we issue floating debt, that we would pay them, we've already agreed we'll pay 4 basis points, but we're asking for some flexibility here, 2 to 4 basis points on the interest rate swap of mid-market swap. These are same fees that they've charged us for the first two transactions. With the other third parties, that the key players in the firms that we're working with. These are the firms we worked with for the last transaction. We have asked them to discount their fee because this is the third time. There's less effort involved this time, and they are discounting it by 35%. You can see the first year we paid $1.3 million. For this transaction, we're going to pay about $852,500. What we're asking the board's authority is the cost of issuance, which includes the underwriting fee that I talked about in the previous slide, which will be somewhere around $5 to $7.5 million or so, that they not exceed 1% of the bond proceeds. And the reason we're asking for this is there are not, in addition to these counterparties, there are other ancillary contracts that we'll be executing. We certify that our bonds are green. There's a third party that certifies them. And then there are other fees associated, like the bond trustee fee, investment advisor fee, printing cost, and some underwriting related cost. And if you look at the appendix, we have a detailed breakdown of the first two transactions and the breakup of all these costs. So coming to our load, as I said, when we first started the prepay discussion, we said we could easily cover 50 to 60% of our load, and we still stand by that. After we reach this threshold, we will have some fine tuning to do, because 1 megawatt of renewable generation is not equal to 1 megawatt of prepay. Because of the intermittency involved, there's more, we want the megawatts to be fairly firm and certain, so it takes a lot more contracts to back one up. So it eats into the room, and we'll have some fine tuning to do after we reach this threshold. The first two prepay covers about 25% of our load. This prepay, depending on the level we execute, could be an additional 12 to 20%, which would bring our total prepay coverage to 35 to 45%, well below the 50 to 60% threshold. The physical impact, again, this is adding to our bottom line. As I said, the first two transactions bring us about 6.5 million. We believe this transaction can bring us 5 million or more, depending on the size and the actual economics when we execute the deal. Just to put these savings in context, this could add up to 12 million or more a year. 1% discount relative to PG&E rates for our customers costs us about 4 million. So this on its own effort can fund 3% discount to customers. And again, as I said, this is a competitive advantage that we have that our competitor PG&E does not. Okay, so what happens after we seek board authority today? We next have to go to CCCFA board, and we're a member and have a seat on that board. At the October 26th meeting, we'll make the presentation to them and seek their approval. And after that, we should be in position to market the bonds in November. But again, the actual timing will depend on market conditions. I think the conditions are good. The bonds it's a high interest rate market, which is generally favorable. But again, the real economics depends on the spread between tax and tax exempt debt. I believe that's all I had. So before we go for board approval, if there's any questions for me, and a reminder, Mike is also available to take any questions.
Great, thank you for that presentation and also for the reminder on the two previous transactions, which helps some of us in terms of perspective on this. And so let's go first to Director Martinez-Beltran.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank you, Amrit. This is going through the third one, and it was very intimidating the first time that we went through these. These are large numbers that you're talking about, and a real sense of responsibility that we're doing good by the community. So I know you've been asked to go through these numerous times, and I appreciate your patience. I'm really excited to see that we were able to negotiate the discount of the 35%. I really want to thank you for that. I thought that was really great. And I also wanted to ask about the threshold. You said that this will bring us near maybe 40%. We don't know until it happens. And if we think that we have up to 50, maybe 60, would this be the last one that we would anticipate for a while? Or do you think that, we're looking to maybe fill all the way that threshold? I'm trying to get a sense of where we're going with this.
Yeah, that's a good question. We can probably squeeze one more, but I would have to fine tune and work with Monica and her team to look at our power procurement portfolio, the PPAs we have lined up, and how much, because eventually we have to basically assign our long-term PPAs into this, and how many of those PPAs can we assign and accommodate. We're getting to the level where we have to start doing some fine tuning. And one enhancement I should note, it's in the staff report that we made with this prepaid transaction is with the prior prepaid transactions, we were actually settling on a monthly volume threshold where the monthly volume had to be fairly certain at a 95% confidence level or so. We have agreed and worked out where instead of on a monthly level, we do the volume at an annual level, at a 95% confidence level, which actually allows a lot more megawatt hours to not get stranded and wasted. So we can use a lot more of our PPA megawatt hours to facilitate prepay. So that gives us some cushion. So to answer your question directly, we may be able to comfortably do one more, but we're at a point where we now have to fine tune and see how much can we squeeze in. The more we can do, because this is money on the table, the better it is for us.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify again, whether it's 900 million to 1.5 billion, SVCE is not, we are not going to be held responsible for those.
Not for the bonds.
Okay, thank you.
They're non-recourse to us.
Right. Director Lee.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned about the 35% negotiated discount on the service, the financial advisors and the lawyers, which is great. Looking at those three, that we got discount on those, but the last one we didn't, which is the Moody's Investor Service. Is that one that's not very negotiable? It's all based on just the size of the offer?
That's based on the size of the offer, and that's really not negotiable. And Mike, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Unfortunately, it is not negotiable, and it is based on the size, so it could be large if we go with the full size.
So in terms of these rating agencies, we have Moody's, we know we have S&P. Is it kind of like a duopoly that we've got basically out there?
Yeah, and I think Moody's is the predominant prepay rater.
Right. Okay. And no, I just want to say thank you for the the very good report. I mean, obviously, we want to take advantage of the interest rate environment, which of course changes every day. We don't have the crystal ball, but when we last spoke, I think you mentioned that assuming everything goes through and we've got this passed tonight, and we will be able to potentially go to market as early as sometime in November.
That's correct.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Scozzolo?
Yeah, I really appreciate the presentation. I also agree full-heartedly. I really appreciate getting those discounts, and that wasn't just, I could see that easily being like not thought of, quite frankly, and I appreciate any savings that we can get. And we are talking big numbers, of course, and that is definitely certainly intimidating, at least to me. But what I like most about what I'm hearing here is 2 words: minimal risks. That's my favorite thing about this. So I really appreciate that. I'm loving that we're going in that direction. We have the big reserves, and now I'm hearing minimal risks. And I hope that we keep continuing to approach all of our finances in that way.
Thank you for that. I do believe that's it for comments. So thank you for that presentation. And so with that, I'm looking for now some public comment. I don't see any in the room. Do we have any online? No public comment online. So in that case, I'm looking for a motion.
Move to authorize the CEO to execute agreements with firms providing services to enable SVCE to execute its third prepay and to execute the power supply contract with the California Community Choice Financing Authority and related supporting agreements.
Thank you, Director Beltran.
I
Martinez,
second.
yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. It's still not on.
To clarify, the motion is to adopt the resolution.
Yes, sorry. I was just reading from my agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. And your second.
Second as amended.
Okay. Shall we proceed with the vote?
Thank you, Chair. And just to confirm, there are 2 resolutions, Resolution 2023-17 and 2023-18. And with that, we will go for a vote. Chair Tyson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Walia,
Aye.
Director Scozola,
Aye.
Director Meadows,
Aye.
Director Rennie,
Aye.
Director Craig,
Yes.
Director Martinez Beltran,
Yes.
Alternate Director Showalter,
Yes.
Director Klein,
Aye.
Director Lee,
Aye.
Director Mohan, Alternate Director Armendariz.
Yes.
Thank you. And I will note that Director Chu is absent, but that motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. And congratulations to the whole team for putting that together. Let's move on to item number 4, which is a study session, and that's a decarbonization program overview. And I do believe Mr. Justin's going to be coming up here. Justin Zagunis. That's what I meant to say.
Mr. Justin works, if that's.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, directors. Really excited to be here this evening to talk about programs, which is my favorite topic. Programs and policy, favorite topics, I should say. This is really, part of what I would describe as kind of a wider effort to just get a little bit more information in front of the board on the great work that we're doing on programs and policy. And you heard some wonderful presentations already this evening on that front. We're also, updating the reporting that we're bringing to the board in the board packet on a quarterly basis, and that's in every board packet. But we wanted to have this kind of opportunity for a discussion as well. And so this is very similar in spirit to the study session that you all had with Monica and Marin a few months ago. And so we called this a study session as well. And talking with Girish about setting this up, it's a little atypical for our programs. Typically, we come to the board for strategic direction, approval maybe of some program concepts and funding, but the kind of tactical program decision making is something that Girish handles and consults with staff on. But we really wanted to get a little bit unusually deeper into the weeds today to have this conversation, kind of get this opportunity to just do a little bit of level setting, a little bit of behind the curtain, kind of like, okay, what are these programs accomplishing? Where are we going with this? How does it all connect? The focus today is going to be on residential natural gas use, but I'm planning to do several of these where we will talk about other sectors as well. You can see here the agenda. It's a meaty topic. I pruned a lot of slides out of this deck to begin with, and it's still got a lot in it. So I'm going to try to be brisk. To facilitate that, I'm going to ask maybe that we have groupings of slides where I can pause after each kind of set of slides and just see if there's any clarifying questions anyone has before we move to the next set. And then we can take a longer pause at the end to just comments, questions, anything, go back to it. But obviously feel free to stop me if there's something that needs to be addressed. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to look at this wonderful pie chart. This is a pie chart representing our 2022 emissions for SVCE territory. And the total emissions in 2022 are about 3.1 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. That's down from 4 million from our baseline year of 2015. Most of those reductions are coming from the electricity sector. I think, as you can see from this chart, residential vehicle gasoline use is a really big portion of our remaining emissions, as our buildings. The two building sectors add up to about 37%. So that's like a third residential vehicles, a third buildings. Focusing on a couple of these wedges that we spend a little bit more time on the program side, is about 1.1 million machines. And I say machines as kind of a general term here, but those make up about 80% of our emissions. And so you can see, residential buildings, natural gas, what we're going to talk about today, it's over 600,000 things that are out there that are not electric today, that we'd really like to get electric to zero out that emissions wedge. Also, a lot of vehicles. We'll talk about non-residential buildings probably in the future. You can see, it's a similar sized wedge with a lot fewer machines there, but it's a little bit more of a nascent market than the residential side. As I said, today going to focus really on residential buildings, natural gas. So this is sort of a more detailed breakdown just of this sector to start with. About 500,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And you can see the number of machines here. Biggest single number is 230,000 water heaters that are non-electric today, are fueled by fossil fuels. And then I've also included a little bit of information on the portfolio of programs that we have for this sector. So this has been a main focus for our programs. $50 million budget allocated to this, 9 active programs, 10 that we're working on getting out there, and 7 that are closed. So I'm going to pause here for a second to see if there's any questions to start with. Yeah.
I would just, looking at this, my first thought is all machines are not made equal here in terms of the pollution they're creating.
Mm-hmm.
And I would start thinking, well, wouldn't it be easier to go after the blocks where one machine has a bigger impact because that's less decisions that you have to choose. But one of the things we're going after is water heaters, and that seems to be that block has one of the largest number of machines, and actually looks like the third largest piece of the pie. So it's almost not the best place to go after if you're thinking in terms of number of decisions that need to be made to make it happen. So just a thought on that. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great observation, and I think really jumps off of this look at this, right, is that a lot of emissions from fewer machines. As you say, they're not all created equal. So even in this wedge, there's a lot of large commercial or industrial usage, which are really hard to electrify, at least with what we have today. And so, yeah, it's only one decision, but the decision today might, really be no, can't electrify it because there's nothing there to replace it with. A lot of the remaining machines are small, medium business in that sector. And that's a really hard market as well to penetrate. due to some differences, right, in terms of the tenant and the owner. And so it's complicated, I guess. I would agree. I think ideally we'd love to be going after fewer decisions, bigger impacts. At the same time, we're going to need to tackle all of this. And so we're starting, or we've been really focused on the residential side, because certainly not in our area for water heaters, for example, but other parts of the country are already have heat pumps. They're already doing all of this, right? And so this market is more developed. It's more of a mindset shift, paradigm shift that we need to accomplish here. So in some ways, we're closer on that, even though there's a lot more people we need to touch and convince. So I hope that those are my thoughts on it, I guess. I think it's a good question, or a good thing to be looking at.
Director Lee?
Yes, thank you. So the identified items we have is water heaters, space heaters, stoves, and dryers. Those are four main appliances that's still using gas versus electric in our homes. Out of the four, which would you say is the one that would be make it most impact?
So of the emissions, about, you can think 40 to 45% are from the water heater, and 45% are from the space heater. So those are the two biggest single devices, if we could swap them.
Right.
One of the things that we talk about, though, is also the importance of whole home electrification. So even with some appliances, if you electrify everything except for a stove or a dryer or a fireplace, you still have all the gas piping coming to your home. So there's leakage, methane leakage, which obviously is much worse for the environment than carbon dioxide. So it's also a bit of a nuanced answer, but I think in terms of the specific appliances, those are the two biggest ones of home use. Yeah.
Oh, that's helpful. In terms of the water heaters, for most of the water heaters that I'm familiar with, this is gas are the ones that has a tank, right? And now there's also tankless water heaters, both in the gas side and the electric side. By having tankless, you do not need to continually maintain and basically the heat. So basically you use less energy by having tankless. Is that correct?
I'm not sure that that's entirely correct. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we really don't want whether it's tankless or tank gas water here, we really would prefer the heat pumps, as they are more efficient and cost effective overall.
Right. Okay, so basically that's what we're promoting. So on the water heater per se. So we're promoting water heaters it doesn't matter if it's tankless or tank, but we're just promoting electric use for heating water, period. That's
promoting, we promote heat pump water heaters specifically, and those are tanked. Those do have
are
tanks.
tanked.
Yep.
Okay. Because I was reading one of the recipient of the award, actually they changed it to a tankless water heater for, I believe was it a nail salon or?
Yeah, you can get electric tankless as well, and that's something that works for some customers. But in terms of the typical home use, it's going to be a heat pump water heater is what we push.
That's what we most. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great. Director Lee's question prompted a comment or question from me. If, let's say, we're trying to choose and what to focus on, space heaters or water heaters, would it be fair to say that our ability to have renewable energy is at its greatest during the times of maximum solar input, and therefore a water heater, which continues to work year round, even during that period where we have that renewable energy more readily at lower cost, is the thing we should push for more than a space heater, which tends to only be run during the periods when there's less solar energy? Would that be a way to look at it?
I think if I'm following, I think that would be a way to look at it. I think that at the end of the day, we are trying to, we're tackling both, right? Because we really want to manage this transition effectively at scale. We're going to need to prune back the gas system at the end of the day. And so if we're just picking one appliance in a home, or we're, going to a home and just working on one or the other appliance, it's really not going to be the most kind of effective way of doing this. And so, yeah, I think that you're right. There's certainly a lot to be said for managing appliances when they use the electricity, and that has impacts on how many GHG emission reductions you get per appliance based on maybe when it's consuming things, how often it's consuming gas, and then when it would consume electricity and how clean that electricity would be, which I think is what you were pointing towards. But I think that's something that as we move into the future of the grid and bringing on more renewable projects and thinking about, you've heard the term virtual power plant and kind of that direction of really managing the load to match the supply. That's something that we're going to need to do for pretty much any of the appliances that we're working on. So something like pre-cooling or preheating the water during the middle of the day is a solution to that, even if it's more of a year-round.
Yes, I see that. Okay, thank you. Director Rennie?
I just have to go back and mention it. Harvest Thermal is a company that SVCE has given grants to, and they have a system, unfortunately, it's not too prevalent yet, where they use water and they just heat water during the middle of the day. And then that water is used through a heat exchanger for your space heating whenever. So you can heat it during the middle of the day. And not in the evening or the times when there isn't the energy.
This is really turning into a study session. I really like how this is working.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Director Meadows.
Yes. So yet another water heater focused question. And actually it occurred to me earlier, but now's a better time to ask the question.
Just ask.
Siri said, sure, just ask. Not talking to you, Siri. Yes, we are. So in the brochure with the awards, Mountain View Sunshine Gardens has solar water heaters. These are prevalent in Hawaii. Obviously, the seasons in Hawaii aren't quite as pronounced as they are here, but we're not the East Coast either, or the Midwest for that matter. So why isn't there a greater preponderance of solar water heaters? Is it an aesthetic issue? Is it zoning issues? Because I don't know that our cities allow, or is it an efficiency issues? So here, this complex does have solar water heaters, but you don't see them here. You see them all over in Hawaii though.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics for solar water heating other than some work I had done on that in the past. And I think there is an aesthetic question. And I think, we would support anything that is improving efficiency, I guess, which you could say that solar water heating is one way to kind of offset some gas use or electricity use and do that. But I think, many customers don't want to have that kind of piping running around their home or something like that. So there's a variety of concerns or questions. But it is an effective way to reduce gas consumption. So it is kind of an efficiency measure, I would say. Okay, and we really promote that.
Director Schulwalter.
Yeah, it seems like with the things that you have to change in your house to become all electric, the one that you really have to replace on a dime is the hot water heater. If your hot water heater dies, your family is going to be very, very unhappy if you need to wait a week to get a heat pump put in. So are we having systems put together where there's like a loaner natural gas water heater that's put in for a week or two while you get the heat pump one available, or has it changed? So now you can put the heat pump one in on a dime.
It's a great question. And I think Director Schulwalter has given me an opportunity here to say, we're going to get to that in a handful of slides. And so if there are no further questions at this moment, I would like to,
go ahead,
to move forward. Okay, awesome. But I will get to it, I promise. Okay, so thinking about the residential market, what do we need to do with our programs really in order to reach everyone, or with our programs, or what do we need to do for this area in order to electrify all of these homes, right? So 600,000 non-electric appliances. Market transformation. And that's kind of a little bit of a nebulous term for me. So I broke it out here into kind of 5 pieces of what I think we need to kind of be pushing towards. There's affordability through incentives and lower upfront costs. There's awareness and acceptance of these electric technologies, the existence of this equipment that's providing a quality customer experience and is available on the Home Depot shelves or in a contractor's truck. Efficient processes, so permitting, other local requirements, and then workforce that's there, that's helping educate and inform customers about these technologies. Market transformation is really great. This in the climate emergency that we're in, we're really wanting to move even faster, or as fast as we can with this. And so there's market transformation that we want to push, we want to support, but that also connects to this policy piece. And I'll get back to this a little bit later, but policy is a really important forcing function, I think, in terms of helping spur this market transformation to happen maybe a little bit faster than it would naturally happen if we just kind of let it. So I have just a couple of graphs to go over that are kind of background info before we get into some program content. This first one, as you can see, is showing quite a few pieces of information, but I'll just focus you on, this is the number of housing units constructed by decade. So you see the decades on the x-axis here on the bottom, number of housing units on the y-axis. And you can see the legend on the right, but the big green section of the bar is the single family owned, and then we have single family rented, multifamily rented, condo owned, and mobile home. And I think it's really instructive to see, you know intuitively that the housing stock is not uniform, but to see how it is heterogeneous in this way is really important, I think, because it shows you that we have a lot of customers in a lot of different situations. And you can also see down below the x-axis some kind of key benchmarks that we've called out. And I think the big one that I want to focus on is the 1980, pre-1980, which is 61% of our housing units typically are built with smaller panel sizes. And so they may need panel upgrades or replacements before they can electrify. And that's a big burden. It's a big cost. It's a time challenge. There are ways potentially to avoid those panel upgrades, but this is one of the things that I'm going to talk about a little bit more in the program section is kind of thinking about this. But this is a really important kind of demarcation point. Homes after 1980 may still need panel upgrades, but pre-1980 are just more likely to need that. And then I've also just sort of called out kind of the summary of these units. So 56% owned, 44% rented, and 71% are single family, 29% are multifamily. I think I'm going to pause here. I know there's a lot of info on this slide, but I hope that was helpful to see some of the key pieces of it. And if there are any questions on what this slide is showing, I'd be happy to answer those.
I don't see any.
I'll chalk that up to an excellent explanation of the slide.
Must be.
Okay, moving on to my second of the 3 graphics. So this is showing the same categories here: single family owned, single family rented, multifamily condo, and mobile homes. Those are across the x-axis now. You can see them at the bottom. And then the y-axis is showing the percent of households that are fossil fuel. So this is kind of the percent of things that we will need to replace in each of these property types. The yellow bar is showing space heating. Green bar is showing water heating. Blue bar is showing cooking. So I think the interesting things here are water heating, the green bar, pretty consistent. You can see that kind of no matter which type of household you're in, that probably needs to be electrified. It's not electric today. If you look at space heating, the yellow, you can see that typically for multifamily properties, whether that's owned or rented, space heating is less likely to be non-electric. Got too many negatives in that sentence. Space heating is more likely to need, space heating is more likely to already be electric. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. Whereas for single family homes, more likely to need to be replaced as we electrify. And then for cooking, it's interesting, the two rented property types are more likely to be electric today. And the two owned property types there are more likely to be gas today or other fossil fuel. And then mobile homes are kind of a little bit more unique, maybe more likely to have propane or something else like that. So some really interesting, I think, data. Again, the point is just heterogeneity in the building stock and in kind of what customers are facing. The third and final chart here, or table, is looking at our SVCE, which is Socioeconomic Vulnerability Index. This is the way that we really kind of look at our underserved customers. You can see the definition here at the top. I've pulled just a handful of kind of data that we look at. I think what this shows really is that SVCE 3 and 4, which are our more vulnerable customers, are more likely to be multifamily tenants. That's what these two rows are showing you. They're more likely to be lower income, which you can see, more likely to be a Carefara account or live in an affordable housing unit. And they're more likely to be renters. And you can see that as the percent of owner occupied housing really kind of declines as you go left to right. So I think with that, I'm going to pause again and see if there's any questions on either this table, looking at the SVCE customers, or the previous table.
Director Rennie?
The thing that comes to my mind is, is it a different type of decision between a rented unit and an owned unit? It seems like most of our programs have really been thinking around owners, owner occupied, versus going after the landlords. And it's got to be a different decision, and I'm not sure what it is. And should we be trying to think about it a little bit different to motivate them to change?
Yeah, great. I mean, great question and observation. It is very different. That is that sort of split incentive, they call it, or this kind of difference in agency in terms of the person who lives there and is going to experience this versus the person who can make the decision and owns the property, makes it really hard to reach this segment. And so renters, low income, and then multifamily, because that often also ties into renters. Those three are really hard to reach for a lot of different reasons. We typically, or historically, our programs have been focused more towards single family homeowners or owner occupied, as you say. We are branching out now a little bit more into some of these other ones. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section.
And just a quick follow on. So multifamily, are they typically a separate unit for a separate heating unit, cooling unit or water heating for each unit, or are they more a large unit serving several dwelling units? Because again, that goes to number of decisions. If or maybe it's easier replace one thing and cover a larger number of units.
Yeah. It varies a little bit between small multifamily, which looks often more like a single family situation. So actually our Future Fit Homes rebate program, which we'll get into in a second, we do allow small multifamily to also take advantage of those rebates because the systems look actually very similar to a single family system. For larger multifamily, I think water heating maybe varies a little bit more, where it could be in unit or near unit, or it could be central. Or sorry, I have that backwards. Water heating is I think going to be more centralized, although again, it does vary even for large multifamily. And then like heating maybe is going to be local. So either the baseboard heating or split HVAC system. There can be central as well. So I think there is a variation. We do have that data, or we have residential appliance saturation survey data. And so that's something that we look at. I just don't have it for this deck.
Director Klein?
Yes. Just a quick question. So, and I appreciate the, the focus on multifamily and kind of single family. The mobile home community, I think, has been fairly unique here. And I don't know how much, if you look at kind of the examples of just the tours and the showcase that we're doing this weekend, it's not something that we focused on in the past. That being said, from a square footage standpoint and kind of how to get to net zero on a specific site, it's a little bit easier if we talk about solar and kind of the whole upgrade of that unit of that specific mobile home could be done to some degree easier. It's, there's so much logistics I look at when you're looking at single family homes and where you're placing this and the rules as one of the remote speakers talked about, where you put the units there. So, and just from an upgrade of those panels, I think usually mobile home communities have more capacity for power and, some of the other issues that might be there. Have we done a deeper dive specifically in the mobile homes? And I understand the cooking part of that, whether or not it's propane, but I do know a lot of our mobile home community, and even from kind of an underserved standpoint, there's a lot of seniors that are living in our mobile home communities. And so I know it's kind of tying both of those together, but how much have we looked at mobile homes?
Yeah, we've teased them out as part of our building baseline study. So we've kind of, and as you saw, this slide, we've kind of pulled them out because they are unique in some respects. They are eligible for our rebate programs. I don't know offhand if we've really had very much success penetrating that market yet.
Right.
So I think it's something for us to look at.
And just, because I think, and yes, doing single family, doing multifamily, all these have positives, but there you have almost a captive audience that you go into a mobile home community and you get one person to do it, and immediately, you can conceivably have 100 people that duplicate exactly what the other person did. And so not that it's a given, but I think especially for seniors and a fixed income, if it becomes a viable option and it shows that that's doable, it could easily be replicated. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Walia.
Thank you. Just a comment, Justin. There is so much detail here, and for you to be able to get the data, to be able to parse it in so many ways, to look at how we can proceed or what to focus on at one point in time, it has impressed me immensely. So thank you for doing that.
Director Scazola.
Yeah, just to follow off of Director Rennie's comments, I was curious, obviously with rented homes, the landlord, he doesn't have to worry about the energy bill, typically speaking. Is there any sense at this time of what you might say or what information you might give to a landlord that might convince them to go electric, even though they might not see it in their best interest at first?
You said to the landlord, talk to the landlord about it. So there's some, this is a similar challenge, and today we're not talking about EV charging, but this is a similar challenge on kind of multifamily EV charging as well, is how to get, how to pitch that, how to make that kind of interesting and appealing. Because we want people to be able to see it as an amenity, for example. It is an upgrade to the equipment that is in a lot of these properties. Now that has a flip side where you also don't want to have renovations lead to eviction or raising rents. And so this is something I'll touch on a little bit more in the upcoming programs section, but I think is something that there's a lot of interest in figuring out, and that we need to learn a little bit more about, is how are we going to thread that needle where we make it appealing to the owner of the property, because we need them to buy in and to be interested in doing this. Also make sure that the renters are interested and are benefiting from this.
Right.
Because if we can align all of that, then great, this can take off. But if we're continuing to kind of be it, well, the renter wants it, but the owner doesn't, or vice versa, then it's it's going to get stuck for that population.
I see. Thank you very much.
With that, I'll say, go ahead, Director Mohan.
Thank you, Justin. If you could go back to slide number 12, there was something I felt I did not understand. Is this 12? It's probably this, but let me, so when you say residents will need more support, are there some goals or some strategies that you've already have in mind, or is this something that you're looking for discussion or suggestions, or is this something that's evolving as you move forward in reaching some of these goals?
Yeah, great question. We have some thoughts on ways to kind of approach this and to provide the additional support. And so I'll go into both the current program we have and then some of the upcoming programs that are designed to actually tackle each of these components here. There's also things that we're doing beyond just multifamily, lower income and renters to try to reach, people who speak different languages and really broaden the accessibility of the programs that way as well, both the marketing and with the kind of program materials themselves. So we do have some ideas. I think it's not solved yet, right? And so that's something that we need to see what works and then continue to pivot and revise as we go. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second.
All right, let me suggest you go on to continue.
Okay. Oh, too far. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about, this is kind of the big program dive that we're going to do today is Future Fit Homes. It's an incentive program. Really exciting, I think. This grew out of our heat pump water heater programs that we ran for several years. Through those programs, which we started in 2019, we did 460 heat pump water heater installs, which is fantastic. This program we spun up and we expanded the technology types that were eligible to include HVAC, to include more panel upgrades, pre-wiring, meter removal. And today, where we are, this program has been open for 9 months, fully open for 9 months. I have 218 here, but I looked at the numbers today and we're actually at 286 projects that have been completed. And those are projects that either had a heat pump water heater or a heat pump HVAC, or both potentially. And we've got a bunch more reservations. We're on track this year then to do, if my rough math earlier was correct, something like 400 projects, which is almost equivalent to what we did over the first, several years of the heat pump water heater program. So this is really great. This kind of scaling, we love it. We're not the only program doing this in town also. There's Barron, there's other programs too. So it's great to see this kind of growth and kind of maturation, I think, of some of the local electrification work. You can see here at the bottom, I've got this table showing the reservations that we have, as well as the number of projects complete by technology type, as well as the incentive that's available for each of those technologies. One thing that we have in this program also is there's an additional $1,000 per each of these rebates that's available for customers who are income qualified. And they can be income qualified either by being on Care Fera rate or by participating in another income qualified program. And they just have to show proof of that to make that really simple rather than having to give a lot of documentation to us. One of the things that SVCE really can do somewhat uniquely is to try some of these different approaches. And so with this program, we included a lot of pretty interesting design elements, pushing whole home electrification by including a pre-wiring incentive. The third and fourth bullets here are, something that I talked about on the slide showing that 61% of our units are pre-1980 and may require panel upgrades. And so one of the things that we wanted to include in this program and have added over time is, well, maybe there's ways we can help people avoid those panel upgrades. And there's technology, circuit pausers and splitters, which can help people do that. 120 volt heat pump water heaters require, less wiring and less panel capacity. So these are things that can make installs both simpler and potentially avoid a lot of these costs. And this is stuff that we have looked at as the technology has come out. We added it to our program eligibility so that our customers can actually take advantage of these things. And we're continuing to identify new approaches to try to implement, including the emergency water heater loaner program for those emergency replacements. And this is one that we're looking at probably for Q1 or Q2 of next year to roll that out. It's something that will require us to kind of have a more direct relationship with the contractor. And so we want to fully flesh that out so that we can offer our customers kind of this prepackaged option to get a loaner if they have an emergency replacement need. We've also done things to improve access to the program. So we're very open to letting customers layer incentives with other programs, which is something that doesn't always happen with an incentive program. So it can lead to customer kind of confusion or challenges in navigating this landscape. And it's already a challenging enough landscape. We changed the program about 6 months in, this was a couple of months ago, to allow retroactive rebates. So prior to that, we had been requiring a reservation up front, and then we got some feedback from customers, that potentially if there was an emergency replacement, that it would be hard for them to apply in time. And so we opened that pathway up. And so that's something that we're continuing to expand and kind of increase the retroactive window for application there. And then we've rolled out a Spanish language version of our ads and the application materials themselves. And I included, just because I like these marketing pieces, I included some of the ads that we've been running, different media. Finally, I want to talk about some of the analysis we do of the programmers we're running it and kind of seeing who we're reaching. So we've got a table here sort of showing, which cities the different reservations are in, as well as what I think is really interesting, the Carefera customer reservations. And they total about 5% of all of our reservations as Carefera, which is a little bit under the kind of natural portion of Carefera customers in our territory. And I think when you think about that, that's not super surprising, because what we saw before is that the Carefera customers or the SEBI 3 and 4 customers, the more underserved customers, are more typically renters, lower income. And so it's going to be harder to reach them. And so that's why we are rolling out several new programs. First of which is this concierge, which is something I'm really excited about, because it's going to help advise people, walk through options, connect them to the various resources that are out there, give them advice on, avoiding a panel upgrade or a question that they should ask their contractor, comprehensive support, and really meeting people where they are, depending on what their questions are. There's a lot of interest in this concept, this concierge idea, because as we think about scaling, as we think about the region starting to do a lot more electrification, I think one of the gaps that a lot of our stakeholders have identified and that we've certainly seen is this, like, how do we help people who aren't super energy savvy and do this? And so there's interest in this, basically this demo that we're running on, okay, does this bridge the gap, or who does this work for? What approaches have worked? Another program that we're going to roll out soon is the multifamily direct install program. This is going to be upgrading to electric for larger multifamily affordable housing units. And so this, to some of the questions earlier on, okay, what kind of systems are there in large multifamily? What does it look like to electrify them? This is going to be a way for us to try that and learn while also reaching this population. We're also going to include efficiency and other upgrades to this program, such as replacing inefficient electric baseboard heating where we find it, to make sure that we're kind of helping reduce customer bills at these locations. And that's something we're going to be managing closely. Finally, the on-bill financing program. This is one that I think the board has heard about from us a little bit before, because we've been engaged with the CPUC talking about the statewide tariffed on-bill financing program. And that is a really interesting concept because it's one way that we will be able to reach renters, because it's essentially is financing that you pay back based on bill savings. And so there's a lot of work you have to put in order to make sure there are bill savings, obviously. But once you do that, then there's no upfront cost to the customer. There's no ongoing cost. There's only savings to the tenant. And over time that gets paid off, and then the bill savings get even larger. And so it's a way that we can reach low, moderate income customers as well as renters. And hopefully address this question of, well, how do we make it work for the property owner as well as for the tenants who are there? Okay, I know I went through a lot there, but I'm going to pause here.
Director Rennie?
Could you go back to slide 18?
Oops, sorry.
So reservations by city, when I look at that data, it says something to me. I was surprised to see Saratoga and Los Gatos pretty far up the list because we're on the smaller side of the cities, but we're also on the wealthier side of the cities. And some of the very large cities, Milpitas are further down the list, Campbell's larger, further down the list, Gilroy, Morgan Hill are all bigger, way down the list. What it's maybe saying is we're reaching the wealthier people, but we've got a middle group of people that don't feel wealthy enough to do this, but they don't fall into the CARES fair, so they're not getting extra help. So it seems like somehow it's like the housing. We got this missing middle problem with the housing, right? We build affordable housing and we build luxury housing, but the middle stuff is missing. And I've seen some, like we may be getting a hole in how we're reaching people here, and we may need to think differently, or maybe, I don't know how you would do it, but some way to give a little more help to people. They're not all the way into the programs at the bottom, but they're stuck in that range where they don't get help, but they really don't have the money to do this either.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think it's a great observation. I agree. There's some kind of trends that you can kind of pick out of this chart, just sort of by eyeball, and we're going to look a little bit more deeply as well, just to see, specific customers. What can we tell? Some of these cities have higher populations in multifamily and things like that are also maybe harder to participate in this specific program. I think to your broader kind of observation on the sorry, I lost what I was going to say there, but it was going to be great.
I think you were going to we've got a hole of people that we're not giving enough support to, basically for one reason or another.
Yes. Thank you. I think what you've flagged is kind of this moderate income question, which is something where it's folks who maybe don't have enough capital available to pay for a project on their own and then get a rebate and kind of go through that side of things, but also aren't going to qualify for enhanced rebates because they're not kind of low income in the same way. And that's another thing that we're hoping the financing concept can really help support, because if we can basically say, hey, there's no upfront cost for you on this, we're going to finance it and we'll help you pay for it in that way. Maybe we can unlock that segment. I don't know that we know yet if that will fully work, because I think what we've seen in some other kind of conventional on-bill financing programs is that still it's more affluent customers who are taking advantage of the financing because, or if it's 0% financing or something like that, it's a good deal for them. It makes sense, but it's like, how do you kind of lock it to hit the folks that need it most?
Yeah, I sounds like we don't have a solution yet, but it's probably a good idea to be thinking about how to unlock it more.
Thanks.
Why don't you go ahead? Oh, did you have a hand up? Go ahead.
I had a quick comment. Nowhere in here have I seen any cost of what it would take to upgrade to one of these systems. Have we done any research of and research on different types of homes? For example, a new home is pretty easy because it probably has all of the current code electrical inside of it. But let's say an older home that actually has to have a new panel, or one that even has the IMPO for the electrical is too close to the gas, and you're required by code now to move that. And that can be some pretty prohibitive costs there. So have you done any research on that to see what some of these systems might cost? And if you would like, I will give you the quote that I got from my house, which kind of made me put the brakes on the project. And it was done by I don't want to mention their name, but they were supposed to be a very respectable vendor in this area, very popular. You see a lot of their trucks driving around.
Yeah, we certainly have done both research into the costs, and one of the things that we do with our program is we're tracking all of the project costs that are actually happening through our rebate program. We get that information from participants, and we share that publicly so that folks can kind of understand what possible range is. But I think, to your point, there is one of the challenges here is that the range of costs can be very large. And so when you think about that, you know, the chart showing different kinds of properties and units, I think even within that, there's yet more variation in terms of, yeah, do you have a, you know, where is your panel located, or where is your service located, or what existing configuration do you have? Is there actually enough space in your, you know, in the closet where you have your water heater to put in a heat pump version? And do you have a drainage? So there's a lot more even than kind of what meets the eye with this. We are working right now on doing what I would say is kind of like a next level study to try to tease out, okay, how many properties or how many houses in our territory fall into this bucket of challenge, I guess, in terms of electrifying, and how many in this and how many in this, so that we can a little bit better understand, here's an average project cost, but what will it look like in our territory?
Okay, and kind of along that train of thinking, a lot of the conditions of the rebate require a general contractor who, again, is licensed and very well known. But has there been any thoughts about, hey, you know, my brother-in-law is a contractor, he'd come over on the weekend and do this for me, but that doesn't then allow me to qualify for the rebate, so I can't do it. But if they had those options available to them, and there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there that are very competent, and I've changed water heaters. They're not that hard to do if you don't have to go through and move a panel or anything like that. It'd be nice if there was some incentive for the do-it-yourselfers. You might get some more people on board with a program like this. Has there been any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so we do require that a permit be pulled to receive our rebate, but we also allow DIY projects, and we actually have quite a few DIY projects that have gone through our rebates, both in the original heat pump water heater program and then in this updated program.
Okay, you might want to make that a little bit more prevalent. It doesn't seem to be very obvious in some of the program materials.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Director Showalter?
Yeah, this may be something that everybody else knows, but I don't really know. It seems like we're talking all here about money and how the financial barriers are the barriers, but it seems like that's, at least when I talk to people, it's much more than that. It's also permitting problems. So when I look at this chart of, you know, who has the most of these projects, that of course could be related to money, but is it also related to ease of permitting, or do we know?
We know more than I know at this moment, I guess. What I didn't do is kind of map permitting challenges to that list of projects, but we have completed a analysis of permitting processes across our jurisdictions. And we're moving now into kind of the phase of, all right, how do we help support jurisdictions that want to adopt more streamlined permitting processes to help remove that friction point?
And good, because I know in Mountain View, we have a permitting system in the last couple of, I think it's just the last couple of years where you can really get your permit to go solar, right there when you come into the city hall. And that has helped speed these things up, and people really like it. So I would think with the other aspects, I know for the electrical work, it's much more complicated, but the permitting is something I hear about all the time as a council member.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks.
And Justin, can you tell me how many more slides do you have?
I have, well, I can kind of jump through the next program. I'd like to spend a little bit of time at the end. So I probably have 5 more minutes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. One thing I just want to add though to this last comment is I think, the concierge, for example, is another program that's intended to try to address maybe those non-monetary barriers. So we'll see if that's helpful as well. Okay. I'm just going to mention future fit fundamentals, contractor training. This is another approach that we're taking. Another, I would say kind of non-monetary barrier is finding a contractor who really will support an electrification project. There are a lot that do, but just making sure that it's easy there, or every contractor that our customers are coming across is kind of doing that. So we've got this program trying to help support contractors to learn a little bit more about electrification through this course that we offer. And we've also recently added this bonus for customers or for contractors who do an install for one of our customers. They will get an additional $500 for that project as long as they completed the training. And that's in addition to the incentive that the customer is getting through Future Fit Homes. Okay. So just going back to kind of market transformation, I want to just touch on the scale of the challenge here. So we've talked a lot about what we're doing, the things we're trying. When we think about if we wanted to replace all of the water heaters in our territory, it's about 20,000 per year that we would need to replace. That's kind of how many die each year and need to get replaced. Today, our programs of the past few years have been about 100 a year. We're moving now into 300, 400 a year. In the coming couple of years, we could double, could triple based on the programs and the uptake that we get for what we're running. But you can see, it's still quite a bit different from this 20,000 a year number. And we have, BACMD has set this rule to require that water heaters be replaced with heat pump water heaters starting in 2027. And so this is the kind of policy as a forcing function thing, which is we're now working towards this. And so the way that this needs to happen is through market transformation. Like BACMD is not going to enforce this, and this will get pushed out unless there is kind of sufficient progress on affordability, on the availability of products and of the workforce, and of processes and awareness. So removing friction from the system. And so these are kind of, I've relisted here a little bit some of the key things that are supporting affordability, IRA. There's things that SVCE can support, like maybe a bulk purchase or things like that. Financing, we've talked about that. So these are all areas that we are working on and trying to kind of demonstrate, to push forward, because if we can help the region really check all of these boxes, then we can allow this kind of policy to go into effect. And you can see that if it does go into effect, it's going to have this huge impact. We just need to really keep pushing and kind of keep ramping and bending this adoption curve up. I do want to highlight the local policy and processes piece. I think that's something that you as council members in your respective cities really have a lot of power to do, both to help remove friction by adopting new policy processes. You heard from Mr. Carney earlier about noise ordinances. There's a lot of different kinds of friction points that exist that you can help address. And then there can also be local policy like requiring that AC units actually get replaced with heat pumps, which can function both as an AC and as heating. And the price point is actually pretty comparable, especially if there's an incentive available. And if you start to require something like that, you can start thinking about, well, what if we're 10xing the number of heat pump water heaters this next year? Or in that example, it'd be HVAC, I guess. But you can really, at a local level, help drive some of the increase in units being deployed. And that will help support kind of this larger regional electrification of everything.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you talk about this chart is actually pretty scary, right? In terms of how fast we will need to change. I don't think I'm realizing. And of course, IRA funds, you're not about retirement account funds. You're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act funds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now,
oh yes.
Okay. Now on these type of rebates, there are our rebates as SVCE offer. There are state rebates. There are federal rebates, like you see in the IRA. Do people get to double or triple dip on these when they make these changes, or they only apply for one or the other?
Different programs have different rules. We are today pretty open with allowing stacking of incentives, as long as we're not, sort of overpaying.
Well, they will never get more than what they pay to make the change, like the parts and labor. But the point is that, let's say our rebate only covers half of the actual cost of the parts and labor. They are allowed to then also apply for state or federal to add to the total.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, I think I just wanted to emphasize, you all have already kind of done this with the 2022 REACH codes, right? This was an example of policy that you were able to adopt, in part because it was already cost effective. It already kind of checked a lot of these boxes, and you can see the scale that has, 50,000 heat pump water heaters over the next 3 years. That is going to have a material impact on getting our region ready to electrify even more at scale and electrify all the existing buildings. It's harder now a little bit to go into existing buildings, but still, it just shows kind of what can be accomplished. And then as my final slide, just want to really note for you all, again, we provide quarterly report in the board packet. We've got our list of active programs on our website. If you have questions, ideas, interest, you're hearing from customer, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it. We'd love to get into whatever specifics. And we really, we do leverage you today to help us market programs to your residents. But if you have ideas on other things that we can do or that you can help us do, we'd really love that as well. And then again, just highlighting this lever that you really control, which is working with us and your city to help remove friction and push scale through processes and policy.
Great, thank you, Justin. That was quite a comprehensive presentation. In fact, let me go ahead and start. Since you're looking for ideas, I'll give you one for free. Use Google Maps to identify every residence that already has solar on it, and they probably already upgraded their panel, and they're kind of inclined toward this sort of thing, and they might be ripe for their HVAC or water heater.
Thank you.
Director Martinez Beltran.
Thank you, Chair. I love that suggestion. I apologize because I held my questions just so that to wait till you got through everything. I had read through it and I had a couple things that popped up. So I've got 4 main points that I'd like to share with you. Fantastic presentation. I love that we're discussing this. I think we're probably all in the best place to help with something like this rather than, our bond change or what have you. So this is really great. Number one, I wanted to talk about the ones that the residences before 1980 that need panel upgrades to electrify, which I've had, and I think I brought this to this board some time ago, somebody in downtown Morgan Hill and others who've come since talking about they weren't able to upgrade, or they had actually upgraded this one all electric and it sat for months because they didn't have the panel. So it was a rental that they took no rent on for almost a year. And I was not their favorite person when I could not help. So, but this is great. And I wonder, are we looking at, have we had discussions, whether it's internally or about upgrading panels and maybe offering reimbursements on that? I know that it's very expensive to do. What could be our possible role in helping to get that achieved for people?
Yeah. So our program does include an incentive for if a panel upgrade is necessary. But to your point, I think you're also talking about the kind of the service upgrade to PG&E and some of that. And we obviously are not the distribution utility. We don't control the wires. And so we are engaged on the legislative and regulatory side in conversations to try to understand better what process is being followed for upgrading the distribution system and maintaining it, and kind of promptly providing service upgrades where needed, and kind of planning ahead for this electrification, because we also know that that is going to be a barrier unless the process works and is smooth. So
yeah, the promptly is very much okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Number 2 was talking about, I don't know if we have a program, and I'm sorry, one of my colleagues was talking about looking at what the cost is to upgrade, but also some type of a program, an online program where we can have people look at, what they can save as a family by upgrading to all electric. And we have the information of their usage, so we could actually do some evaluation. And then, how many family members do you have living there? What is it that you're looking to upgrade? Are you upgrading just the water heater? Are you upgrading your stove too? Do you have a plug-in? I would love to see something like that. People love to put in their scenario and just be like, oh, I could save this much, or, and maybe that would be a great way to encourage them. And I think that kind of goes with the whole unlocking of, maybe somebody who's on the fence, we could kind of bump them over. And then there was looking at the age. So when we were looking at these, who is kind of upgrading it, I wanted to ask, are we looking at age and new homeowners, which are not only renters who then become homeowners because they seem to be more likely to have control over what they can change, but also college students who, you move out for the first time and now you're head of household. And so you're able to make different decisions. And I want to make sure that we're capturing that young group that now has earning potential and they can make these decisions that they were never doing before when mom was doing their laundry. So, trying to see, if we're looking at that. And I also think about, I've worked in commercial real estate and just thinking about, the change of hands of property, especially now when we think about seniors and maybe they're, as they're aging, they might go into an ADU, whereas their children might be taking over the main home if they have their own children. And so seniors, maybe they might not be willing to do the upgrades because, they're kind of tapering out here of wanting to do all of this work, but maybe the new family moving in or their son or daughter with their family would be very interested in doing that. I know when I think about my parents' home, there's all kinds of things I would want to do, if we were to move into that home. So I think that's a really good area for us to try and invest in. And our younger people are very educated about climate change and they are very worried about it. And I think this is something that would really be on their horizon. And then number 4, kind of going back to the unlocking, and I think personally, I hope or try to bring value in this area of, I always have kind of seen environmentalism as almost as a privilege of wealth in a way. It's not that, for example, Latino families or marginalized communities, that they don't think about it, because they very much do think about it, but they're not able to do it. They don't have the economic means to make that happen. And so I was talking a while ago about renters. And when I think about renting, it's, you have your washer, your dryer, your refrigerator. And I know this said this before, but if we could make water heaters where it's like a refrigerator or a washer and dryer, if we could make electric stovetops where it's like that as well, very interchangeable, then I think people would be much more willing to invest in that, right? Because when you leave, you can take it with you. And so I wonder if we could maybe look at fueling or financing some kind of incubation on appliances like this. And I think that might be a new place for SVCE and all CCAs to be looking at so that we're pushing the market to give what we need. You know, something like a fit to move, you have an appliance that kind of moves with you, right? Wherever you go. So those are some of the things that, you know, that I'm looking at. Maybe we do rebates on those and then people can take it with you. I grew up in an owned home and now have rented with a family, which is, there's so many things that have come up being a renter that I just feel very passionate about, especially in this market where, you know, things are hard. So those are my comments. I think you guys are doing fantastic work. I'd be happy to talk about any of this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Do we have Director Rennie and then Klein?
If I could add on to some ideas there. I think the big friction point, you know, back in your slide were basically pre-1980, most of those you're saying don't have 200 amp service. It's more than 50% of the homes, I guess, in our service area. That's a lot of panel upgrades that are going to be needed. I know there's some ideas on how to maybe get around panel upgrades, maybe you cut it in half, but that's still a lot of panel upgrades. And if PG&E has to come out and run the wire to the house for every one of those, there's not going to be enough PG&E employees for us to ever be successful. So the legislative idea that I might explore would be requiring PG&E to have some kind of certification program that allows non-PG&E employees to do this work in some way. So it's not forced into this bottleneck of the only way it's going to happen is if PG&E quadruples, quintuples the size of their workforce, which probably is difficult to do. So I think this might be a really good area to be thinking about. And I would bet that Senator Becker's a good one to work on carrying it. Obviously, I don't know that much, but I just have this feeling that this could be a place to unlock some of this friction we're talking about.
Yeah, there have been some bills that we kind of tracked and we're looking at this last cycle. Can't remember offhand which ones they were, but to put kind of shot clock on some of the distribution timeline and to get a little bit more information. But yeah, great point. And I do want to emphasize, and I know you said this, but just because you have a panel that is smaller than 200 amps does not mean that you can't electrify on that. We're also looking at the data, the load data that we have to try to understand how close are our customers to needing to upgrade if they were to electrify their end uses. So that's something that we'll be able to kind of help, you know, both target and tell people like, hey, we think that actually you don't need to upgrade your panel. And we can also find out, yeah, is it 50%? Is it 20%? Like how small is it to help us understand how big the problem kind of is.
Director Klein?
Yes, and we've talked a little, and thank you for the presentation. This is great information. And thank you for all the hard work that's across the organization to do these different programs. We've talked a little bit in the past about affordable housing, multifamily. And I think, you know, and it's not really called out here, but it is kind of that combination of when you're talking about multifamily and the opportunities, but also lower income. And so the segment that really to reach out to is the affordable housing nonprofits that are running multiple sites within each of our cities, because, you know, within Sunnyvale alone, I think Mid-Penn has 15 different locations that they're running. And so it's educating them on what they need to do on a single site and then duplicating that, as opposed to going to 16 different landlords and trying to sell the idea. And from a price point standpoint, a lot of the affordable housing nonprofits are also looking very much into the future of, okay, this saves us a certain amount of money, as opposed to more of a pass through of every standard landlord. It's like, well, any cost, yeah, I don't want to invest. I'm happy to do with what I have right now. And so, Mid-Penn, Charities Housing, there's lots of affordable housing nonprofits that manage multiple sites and have similar issues, although built over a period of time. And so that information, I think, was enlightening to me, is, when these homes were being built and kind of what that mix is. But I do think that that's one untapped market. And we've talked about in the past, here was at least one Mid-Penn was already upgrading, putting solar panels on one of their Sunnyvale projects. And I do think that has a lot of opportunity, just to see an overall partnership, as well as they have additional potential funding at a state or federal level, that they're always looking for those funds. So if we can make it a little bit easier, I think that has a lot of value. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Director Meadows.
So this is going to be a little bit of a weird idea, especially because it's for people who don't have purchasing power, but they have tremendous influence, which is the children. And the children are very into the environment. So I wondered if you looked at, we had our 6-year-old grandson talking about an electric car, and I knew it wasn't from his father that this came from. But, if you have age appropriate materials that can educate the kids, and they bring all those materials home to their parents, and then the peer pressure is put onto the parents from the kids, particularly once they hit the middle school age, and they're tremendously driven by climate change in the world, as are their parents. And so I wonder if there's some educational materials to look into from our younger advocates who have no purchasing power but tremendous sway.
I like that comment, and I would extend it into the teenagers. In our community, we have a teen CERT program, and so community emergency response team. And I think it's just a wonderful way to get teenagers to look at their parents. It's kind of like, do you ever remember teaching your teenager how to drive, and suddenly they know all the rules better than you do? And so kind of the same sort of thing. So if we focus on teenagers, and we already do with our video contest. So we've got an element of that, just things like that. I see the value of it. Martinez Beltran, please.
Thank you. I really like that, Director Meadows, but I wanted to just share that Valley Water, and I forget what the other one, they have these coloring books that I have for my girls. And, it talks about whatever it is, it's water. And I think the other one is fire. And then the cops have one also. And that's really cool. I take it home and I'm like, or, whatever, I'm just do this, please, right now. Like, give you a little bit of time. So I think that's good. And then the other thing was, I just wanted to mention on the renters, as I'm thinking about this more, as I'm hearing everybody comment, on that slide 10, it really struck me when I was looking at that, because the renters are about as much as the single family homeowners, right? If you add the multifamily renters and the single family home renters, they added up to the same amount. And so I just really think there's a big opportunity for us there. Thank you.
Great. Director Showalter.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what you said about the Valley Waters program. I worked there for 17 years, so I observed it quite a bit. And they have an extensive program of going into the public schools. Well, not just public schools, going into the schools, elementary schools, and also preschools, to talk to kids about water and saving, and also composting. And so I think that there could be a very strong potential for collaboration with, with Valley Water on these issues. because they also have, have made many movements to be environmentally friendly and are very, very concerned with power costs and the cost to move water and all that sort of thing. So I think there's a big collaboration possibility.
Great. Vice Chair Walia.
I'm thrilled to hear from so many of you, something I've been talking to Pam about, because their programs, when they go to schools in all our cities, the children are the ones, I couldn't have put it as eloquently as you did, Director Meadows, that these are the influencers without the purchasing power. But those are the ones, those are the children who are driving the parents. I know they are the ones who come to us with all kinds of questions. And sometimes I have to say it's a school board issue. Very often I have to go there. So I try to channel those students in different directions when they come to me. That's exactly why I was sharing with Pam that this is an untapped opportunity, because that is the generation that really believes in this problem. And so, yeah, they have to live it. Exactly. So Pam has said that she's going to be working through the organization in due course with each group. And I also mentioned to Girish about this issue. So I'm actually very happy to hear about the other ideas, the collaboration and the coloring book. You're right. I have picked that up, and that's the way to add more, bring in more ideas when the SVCE staff go into our schools in different cities, which they do at least in the month of April, they do for Earth Day or Arbor Day, something like that. I've seen them in most cities. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I see the hand up for Director Armendariz, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard some really great ideas, and I want to caution us that we don't target kids, right, in lieu of those families and those working class folks who end up being property rich, right, but not a lot of capital, like the working families that I'm talking about in my community in Gilroy. We have neighborhoods and neighborhoods of folks who were able to build their homes through the sweat equity programs, right? In lieu of a down payment, they would build their own homes through some of the programs that came out of the civil rights movement of the 60s and early 70s. And so we find that those families are now having 2 and 3 generations in their homes because the economy surpassed their wages, and the generation previous to mine who were able to buy those homes and build them themselves aren't benefiting from these programs, as I saw from the data. And so I like Councilmember Martinez Beltran's ideas, and I also like the idea of taking the next and bold step of fronting, capital, fronting these items to families that can't afford them, even though they're homeowners. It might, pinch our budget. It might seem a bit too expensive, but I think it's the most plausible thing and what would help these families the most, who, like I said, don't have the capital to front or to invest in new appliances, new wiring, new water heaters, or solar panels, things like that. I think we need to go ahead and provide those, right, and figure out a payment schedule or a fee schedule, something that's going to help them get those, because they're the ones most impacted always by regressive taxes, by utility rate increases, by climate change. And so I would love to see us take a bold step in that direction. Thank you.
Great, thanks for those comments. Go ahead.
Very quick, and just in different languages.
I'm sorry, what was that?
In different languages.
In different languages, yes, of
All
course.
different languages would be great.
Great, thank you. I don't see anybody else up, so I will just say thank you, Mr. Justin. And I think we really turned that into a study session, and we got a lot of ideas. I hope your hand isn't sore from writing down all those ideas, but you'll recover. With that, yes?
We have a public comment.
And we'll go on a public comment. Yes, please.
Thank you. Bruce Carney, when you are ready.
Thanks very much. So I wanted to comment on something Director Lee had mentioned. He looked at the pace of installations of heat pump water heaters and other electrification over the past few years and looked at what needs to happen in the future. And he noticed this enormous gap in terms of the pace. And of course, that is one of the most salient points that any of the directors can observe. So what has to happen to make that big ramp up? I've often spoken about World War II. People in the climate advocacy world often say we need a World War II scale response to the climate crisis. Well, World War II, from the American perspective, lasted less than 4 years. So if we got on the same pace, we would declare victory in the summer of 2027. We're obviously not on pace to do that. We don't even know how to get on pace to do that. One of the many ways that SVCE might help would be if it could be the centralized permitting resource for electrification of buildings, not for remodels, not for new construction, but just for these very specific things of building electrification that some cities are pretty good at and some cities are pretty obstructionist at. And I think many cities would love to not have to build up their staffs in the building permit department and just say, SVCE, please handle it through a streamlined, centralized, simple process that applies to all of the cities within its jurisdiction. I think that would be a real contribution. I'd also like to applaud SVCE for the potential of replacing baseboard electric resistance heaters in apartment buildings with heat pumps. That will save money for those who live there and provide electrical capacity that can be used for other things. And the last thing I'd like to do is to suggest that Mr. Zagunis and others make sure the board understands NEC code 220.87. This is the part of the code that lets somebody who thinks their electrical panel is all tapped out realize that they have much extra capacity. In my 1944 vintage home, it looks like my panel, 100 amps, is all tapped out, but according to information from Steve Schmidt and his company in Los Altos Hills, I actually am only using 1/3 of my panel's capacity, and so I can add a lot of electrification. So thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Always good to hear from you, Bruce. Thank you. With that, I think we're complete with this item, and we'll move on now to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Let me just speak up that I think we're all aware that our CEO, Girish Balachandran, is out somewhere in Europe on some boat or something like that. But in the meantime, he has planned a retirement, and you have commissioned a search team. And I want to tell you that we're proceeding according to the schedule that we told you before. We're making great progress and have further actions coming up very soon. So I'm feeling very good about the progress and expect to, as I say, meet that schedule that you've heard. Do we have any other comments or announcements from members? Director Scozola.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that at our last council meeting, Pam came out to present Campbell's Electric Showcase Award winner, Judy Wang. She upgraded her home to include installation of a heat pump water heater, purchase of an electric vehicle, and the installation of rooftop solar panels. And I wanted to share her quote. I thought it was pretty cool. She said, "Since making the switch, I haven't looked back, and I'm saving up money to go fully electric, one appliance at a time." So there we have it.
Very nice message. Do we have any other Director Meadows? And then,
Just quickly, it was probably about 2 weeks ago. Pam again orchestrated with others. I'm sure that Los Altos' Community Center received through the Silicon Valley Business Journal Structures Award, the All Electric Building, and we have a very shiny crystal pointy award. So sitting somewhere to recognize our All Electric Community Center. Thank you.
great, thanks for sharing. Director Lee.
Yes, this is just a shameless plug of a great event coming up this Saturday on the 14th of October for Day on the Bay, where we will have all kinds of exciting stuff going on over at the Alviso Marina Park. Starting with the bike to the Day in the Bay, there's two groups, I believe, one group from Sunnyvale, another group also from the county building park lot over at West Heading. But more importantly, there will be a lot of showcase of, first I want to thank SVCE for the sponsorship last year and this year as well for showcasing some of the good work so that people can learn from it. But all the county departments, a lot of the nonprofits will be having all kinds of exhibits alongside with people getting their pumpkins for the kids, free pumpkins. We've got vaccines for both COVID vaccines and also the new one, and also the flu vaccines will be made available as well, along with climbing walls and all kinds of fun stuff. You can actually even go kayak there, but you have to get there early to sign up. So a lot of fun things to do this coming Saturday on the 14th from 10 to 3. Thank you.
Great. That does sound fun. I think, oh, Director Mohan.
Yeah, we in Cupertino had an opportunity to present an electric showcase award last night, in fact. And thank you to Don Bray for making the presentation. Our award winner was in the sort of middle category. He hadn't finished it all. It's on the way, I think. And his quote was, every morning his family just wakes up and hopes that their old water heater fails so that they can get to the water.
Well, our one of our winners was from Congregation Beth M, and her quote, which I can't say exactly, was, we have air conditioning too. So it's something they've never had. So it's very exciting. With that, I think that's all of the comments. And so thanks everybody for joining us. We are now adjourned.